At the beginning of the story, we see Wing Commander Jackson arriving at the Ito dojo, where some students are practicing. Jackson, in anger, approaches the master and asks about the person in the photo on the wall, where he is now. However, the students present get angry at Jackson because he walked in with his shoes on, but their master stops them and speaks to Jackson himself. He tells Jackson, "That man is my father and also my master. Do you know him?" Jackson replies, "Yes, unfortunately, from the time of the war." The master then asks, "Who are you?" Jackson introduces himself. "I am Wing Commander Jackson from the Royal Air Force, and I spent a lot of time with your father during the Battle of Bataan." Hearing this, the master says, "My father always told stories of your legendary fighting and the forbidden move, but now you have come to my dojo, the same one that brought disgrace and trouble to my family. Now I will make you suffer." He quickly orders his students to beat Jackson and throw him out. But Jackson, a highly skilled fighter, quickly takes them all down. The master, shocked, asks Jackson why he's really here. The story then shifts back to 1942, during World War II at the height of the Battle of Bataan. We see Jackson fighting alongside the Allied forces, but the tide of war turns when the Japanese army launches a relentless attack, and Jackson's aircraft is shot down and crashes in enemy territory. His co-pilot does not survive, so Jackson begins to drag his friend's body into the jungle. The next morning, when the Japanese soldiers arrive at the crash site, they see Jackson's friend's body and realize that another enemy might still be alive. They start searching all sides, but Jackson, who is hiding behind a tree, throws a rock to distract them. As they move toward the noise, he attacks from behind, but by mistake, one soldier falls directly onto a landmine. Hearing the explosion, the other Japanese soldiers arrive and see Jackson. To save his life, Jackson begins to run into the jungle, but he is soon captured and taken to Commander Colonel. Seeing Jackson alive, the colonel angrily orders his men to take him into the jungle and execute him. A few soldiers take Jackson into the jungle to kill him, but Jackson fights back to save his life, taking down the soldiers one by one and escaping again. While fleeing, he finds a Japanese aircraft in the jungle. Before he can do anything, the Japanese discover that their prisoner has escaped again and recapture him after he falls into a trap. When the colonel finds out that Jackson has killed his soldiers, the colonel, in a fit of rage, tells Jackson, "You killed my brother, Captain Hirano. Now go get some rest, because tomorrow morning you will die." Jackson is thrown into a cell where he meets other prisoners from various countries, including Gabriel, an American Marine, and several Filipino resistance fighters. They ask Jackson how he was captured. He tells them the whole story, that he's with the Allied forces and his plane crashed during the fight, which led to his capture. The prisoners explain the rules of the prison and tell him more about the colonel. The next morning, Jackson is brought before the colonel with his hands tied. He believes he's about to be executed, but the colonel orders his men, untie him. Then 3 other prisoners are also brought into the ring, and they are forced to fight a highly skilled fighter who brutally kills everyone. Jackson watches this and understands he is about to die in the same way. But as soon as he is brought into the ring, Jackson takes down the fighter with a single blow. Seeing this, the colonel gets angry and walks away. Later, the colonel's second in command asks for permission to kill Jackson, but the colonel refuses. He says, "He's not just any prisoner like the others. Be patient. Jackson's time will come." Meanwhile, Jackson then meets Captain Colin, who is happy to see Jackson and says, "I'm glad you're on my side." He then takes Jackson to get a drink where other prisoners are present, but then the colonel's soldiers arrive and take Jackson with them. The colonel asks Jackson, "Where did you learn these skills and who trained you? Did you learn this in Japan?" Jackson says he is trained in many places. The colonel realizes that Jackson is hiding something. He then asks if a specific item belongs to him, and Jackson says yes. The colonel tells him that his father used to be a war hero, just like his own father. Jackson responds, "My father is dead." The colonel, in a rage, pulls out a sword and says, "Then you should go and meet him." Angrily, he makes a wound on Jackson's face with the sword and orders his soldiers to take him away. The next day, Jackson is once again taken to the same fighting ring, this time to be killed. Standing opposite him are 3 other prisoners who are made to fight against him. But even the 3 together cannot defeat Jackson. He brutally overpowers them all. Watching this, the colonel becomes furious once more and storms off in anger. Afterward, Jackson creates a plan with the other prisoners to steal a Japanese army radio and call for help. One day, as usual, when the Japanese are forcing the prisoners to work, Jackson signals to his companions as they had planned. As his friends start fighting with each other, Jackson takes advantage of the distraction and steals the radio. However, as he's moving ahead, Nurse Evie spots him. Evie is also a prisoner among the Japanese and has been kept there to treat the wounded soldiers. She doesn't tell anyone about Jackson. Then Jackson quickly hides the radio in the sacks and takes it inside. The next day, the colonel gathers all the prisoners and warns them that if anyone tries to escape from the camp, they will be severely punished. To prove his point, he punishes some prisoners in front of everyone, who he suspected of trying to escape. However, Jackson doesn't lose hope and decides to escape that very night. Before leaving, Jackson asks his companion, Cooper, "Do you know where those prisoners were going to escape from, since you were supposed to go with them?" Cooper initially refuses, but after Jackson's persistent efforts, he opens up and says, "Even if you escape, where will you go? This camp is surrounded by jungle in all directions, but I know it's not impossible to get out of here. There's just a blind spot and some cut wires." Hearing this, Jackson sneaks out quietly, evading the guard's eyes. He climbs a hill and tries to use the radio to call for help, but on the radio he hears strange signals, and then he sees a boat burning on the shore. Seeing all this, Jackson returns to the camp. The next morning, he shares everything with his fellow prisoners and tells them the Americans are very close. Gabriel asks, "How do you know?" Jackson says, "I heard Navajo." Colin then explains that this was the code they used when the campaign started. Jackson says, "We need someone who can contact the American forces using the code." Jackson also tells them that he found a glider in the jungle. It could be very useful for their escape, but his companions laugh and say that plane was being used a few months ago to transport people and artillery. But ever since it crashed, no one has survived, and the worst news is that it doesn't have an engine. So how can they use it for help? Jackson says, "We did training missions with C-47s. So think about it. If a pilot is skilled, they can fly low enough to attach a towel line and pull the glider out during a flyby. But his companions say that this might work on a runway, not in the jungle where the glider is. And if the connection is missed, it could be very bad." Still, Jackson is confident. If the pilot comes in straight and there are at least 50 yards of clear space, no trees, no rocks, no obstacles, it'll work. I guarantee it. Finally, the others agree to the plan because they have no other option. Just then, the colonel's soldiers arrive and take Jackson to the colonel again, who asks Jackson, "Do you understand Navajo and other Indian languages that were heard near your area?" Jackson denies it and says he doesn't understand those languages. The colonel becomes angry at this false answer and orders his soldiers tie his hands and beat him mercilessly until he tells the truth. The soldiers start beating Jackson with sticks, but Jackson doesn't lose courage and endures the beating with all his strength. Eventually, the colonel comes out and orders them to untie his hands. As soon as the soldiers untie his hands, Jackson gets up and brutally beats all of them. The colonel and his second-in-command are shocked to see this. As Jackson is about to kill the last Japanese soldier, the colonel's second-in-command, in a fit of rage, hits Jackson with his gun, and Jackson falls unconscious. When he wakes up, he finds himself being treated by Evie. She says, "You're lucky they brought you to me for treatment instead of leaving you to die." Jackson asks, "How long have you been here?" Evie replies, "It's been 3 months. They separated me from my family and made me help wounded soldiers, but I can't stay here like this anymore. I know Colonel will never let me leave alive." Jackson asks her about the place. Evie says, "There's nothing here but jungle all around. No way to escape." Jackson begins to tell her about his escape plan, but before he can finish, a guard arrives and takes him back to his prison cell. There, Jackson finds out that while he was unconscious, an official document arrived, signed by General Douglas MacArthur, warning all Japanese forces that a major assault was imminent. Hearing this, Jackson tells the others, "Don't lose hope. Stay strong. Our escape plan is close now." That evening, Jackson and his companions try to execute their communication plan, but this time, the security is very tight, and a Japanese soldier sees them. They are forced to kill him. Just as they are about to move on, a young soldier appears in front of them. Gabriel quickly grabs him, ready to kill him, but Jackson says, "Don't kill him. Let him go." He is sure the young soldier won't tell anyone about them, and he is right. Despite this, the guards later discover the body of the Japanese soldier. They return to the prison block and search all the prisoners, but find everyone lying calmly in bed, as if nothing had happened. The next morning, the colonel gathers all the prisoners again and says, "I'm sure it was one of you who killed my soldier. It would be better for the guilty one to come forward. Otherwise, all of you will be punished brutally." At this point, Jackson steps forward and takes full responsibility, saying he did it alone. In a fit of frustrated rage, the colonel brings a prisoner in front of Jackson and orders him, "Kill this prisoner with your fighting skills, or my soldiers will kill your friend." Jackson looks at the prisoner and tells the colonel, "I will not kill any innocent person." Hearing this, the colonel orders his soldiers to kill Jackson's friend, but he doesn't know that Colin is also a highly skilled fighter. Colin suddenly attacks and takes down several guards brutally. Seeing this chaos, the colonel immediately orders his second-in-command to stop them. Later, the prisoners are taken back to the work area. While working, Jackson tells his companions that they must send a signal at night. As darkness falls, Jackson and Gabriel sneak out of the camp and reach the hill. There, Gabriel uses his code language to tell their allies about their location. As soon as they get a response, both of them are happy, believing they will get out of there soon. With hope renewed, they return to the camp, but some Japanese soldiers see them. They capture and knock both of them unconscious. The next morning, when Jackson regains consciousness, he hears the sound of planes in the sky. He tries to free himself, and just then, Evie and her friend arrive, free them and give them weapons to fight back against the Japanese guard. As they step outside, they see chaos all around. American planes are attacking the Japanese soldiers to destroy the entire camp. The group quickly rushes to where their radio was, but when they get there, they see that the radio has been completely destroyed, so they go to the tower to find a second radio. However, there are some soldiers standing there with guns. Evie decides to go herself. She takes a knife from Jackson and, along with her friend, quickly makes a plan. As the last soldier approaches Evie, thinking she needs help, she suddenly attacks him. Meanwhile, Jackson and Gabriel quickly run up the tower to give a proper signal to the plane about the glider. On the other side of the camp, Japanese soldiers begin executing the remaining prisoner, lining them up in rows. Jackson spots this from the tower and starts firing at the Japanese soldiers, giving his fellow prisoners a chance to escape. The Japanese soldiers fire back at Jackson, forcing him to take cover. Taking advantage of this, his friends attack and kill the Japanese soldiers there. Suddenly, the colonel's second-in-command captures Gabriel, and the two engage in a brutal hand-to-hand duel. The enemy officer is strong and nearly kills Gabriel, but Captain Colin arrives just in time and saves him, deciding to fight the officer himself. At first, Colin is unable to defeat him, but then he uses his skills to tackle him. Just as he's about to finish the officer off with a knife, two Japanese soldiers suddenly appear and shoot Colin, which Colin collapses to the ground. The second-in-command picks up his hat and leaves alive. Meanwhile, Jackson heads to the colonel's office to confront him. A fierce sword fight breaks out between the two, but the colonel is no match for Jackson and becomes weak. He pulls out his gun and is about to shoot Jackson, but in a rage, Jackson begins to beat him severely, planning to kill him. Just then, Gabriel arrives and takes Jackson with him to escape with the rest of their companions. As they flee, the second-in-command tries to fire at them, but the colonel stops him just in time. Jackson and Gabriel finally make it back to their remaining allies and fire a flare gun to signal the approaching C-47 aircraft. Soon, the plane sees the signal. All the surviving prisoners climb into the glider, strapping themselves tightly. The C-47 swoops down, hooks the glider, and lifts them away. Jackson and his friends are happy to have escaped the enemy territory alive. However, the colonel and some of his soldiers have survived and are still holding some prisoners. The scene then shifts back to the present, where we learn that the man in the picture is none other than the colonel. The master tells Jackson that his father passed away last year. Hearing this, Jackson begins to leave, but the master's students stop him. The master tells his students to leave and decides to fight Jackson himself. He says to Jackson, "I've heard so much about it. Show me your forbidden move today." Jackson decides not to fight, but the master is forced to attack him, and Jackson defeats him very easily. Even so, the master doesn't give up. He stops Jackson again and pleads with him to show him the forbidden move that his father always used to talk about. Jackson prepares to use the forbidden move, but at the last moment, he stops himself and decides to leave. The master stops him and gives him a box containing all of Jackson's old belongings, which the colonel had once taken from him. Jackson picks up the box and walks away. And with that, the movie comes to an end. If you are new to my channel, don't forget to subscribe and like the video. I'll see you in the next recap video. Until then, take care. Bye.